Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I have what I want to call a super extraordinary guest, right? I had the opportunity to hear this young man, and he's very young in my eyes, speak at one of our corporate functions, and his talk was just incredible. But is a former Montclair State basketball player, Union City, born and raised, right? Um, Inspires professional athletes, Super Bowl champ New York Giants, right? Fortune 500 companies, local high schools and colleges, churches, all with his all in philosophy and mentality. Welcome to the show, Gian Paul Gonzalez.
Jeff, man, it's a privilege to be on the show. Thanks so much for doing this.
And I have a million questions to ask you, maybe not a million, but a lot. And I had the privilege to be in the audience listening to your story. And all it's just one word. It's just incredible. Is all I can say about it. But before I start peppering you with questions, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Oh man, yeah, I'll keep it short. Just born and raised Union City, New Jersey. My dad came from Havana, Cuba, when he was 12, and so Cubans ended up in like two places, Miami or Union City, New Jersey. They picked Union City. I wouldn't have minded Miami, but God's plan. And so born and raised here. Then when I went to high school, went to Manchester Regional High School right outside of Patterson, Hailed that whole area. And then, as you mentioned, went on to Montclair State. And then, had some opportunities playing professionally. Was out in Los Angeles for a second, but, came back to Union City. I just really fell in love with the area. And then, besides being a recipient of it growing up, came back to Union City and started teaching ninth grade world history and wanted to become, proactive in just the community and how it can help youth in the area.
Yeah. Now, are you still teaching now?
So not in the classroom every day. I
Okay.
do miss, talking about Julius Caesar and Genghis Khan, but thankful that I still get to work with students in the community and in the area, just with a lot of the nonprofit and the foundational work that I do.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go backwards in time, right, for you, because I want people to hear like the foundation of how this whole thing started. But I'm going to go back to when you were a kid, little kid,
Mm.
and this whole thing is revolving around sports, right? And but what experience did you have in sports when you were growing up, that influenced you to become who you are today?
Oh man, I'd say growing up it was everything. It was everything. My dad he had a brief opportunity, obviously coming from Havana, Cuba during that time. Unfortunately, his dad was put in political prison.
Mm,
So he had a lot of anger growing up. He grew up the first 12 years without his dad, and then when they were exiled to the United States by the Castro administration, he had a lot of anger, and he found a release of that in football. Obviously, they said, yeah, you can hit people and you will get in trouble for it, and so he took to that in high school. Back then, they didn't make helmets the way they do now, and so cracked a few helmets literally. Played for
ugh,
Union Hill High School, which is in Union City. It used to be Emerson Union Hill, and then they merged the two to make it the one high school that we have now in the city. But then played over at St. Peter's College back when they had a football team, and then from there got an opportunity to play as a free agent with the Oakland Raiders. And
wow.
yeah, so growing up, it was huge for me, sports. That's how I related to my dad. That's how I related to my family. When I was born, he wasn't with the Raiders anymore. He was an ESL teacher in the city, and he would go between working his day job teaching ESL at a local high school, and then he would also teach ESL for adult learners at a local vocational school right in North Bergen.
Yeah.
And he'd stop home for like about maybe an hour, if that. And that's when we would play sports. That's when he would have me be quarterback and he would be a running back. But it wasn't just throwing a ball around, right? Because he played at that level, so it was like running 21 dive and 22 dive and handing the ball off a certain way this way and square in and square out. And so like it was official. And obviously some people thought we were crazy. You're doing that in the middle of the street, running like football plays, and oh, this is the two gap. All right, that's the toss. But it was how we bonded. And I think even to this day, myself as a father now, it's that opportunity you get just to build relationship through sports. And so that's what I thought sports as, is a way to build relationship, even
Yeah.
from an early age.
Now, and so how many years was your dad with the Raiders?
So he just got to be like 1 year as a free agent.
Okay.
But he enjoyed the experience. And I'd say with that, and this is not trying to fast forward too much, but I remember being young and we would go to the local shop, right? Just to purchase food, etc. And even though he had that experience playing at that level with football, college, professionally, it always just kind of blew my mind, even at 7, 8 years old, that more people would come up to them because he taught their daughter or son English,
Yeah.
right? Than ever having worn like silver and black,
Yeah.
And so I think that just always just stuck in my mind, especially when I came back to Union City, of just like, man, this is amazing, and this is just a great opportunity in sports, but also not forgetting the personal impact you can have and how much you can make a difference in someone's life.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
I think that's something that always stuck with me, even as a young kid, just seeing how like no one knew that played cornerback, and some people didn't know what he did on the field, but it was how he took that responsibility off
Yeah.
on the field, but even off of it, that really left a really big impression on him.
Yeah, it's what he did in the classroom,
Yeah, yeah,
and he probably impacted more people in one classroom than he did in any of the people in a full stadium.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
100%,
And
100%. Yeah,
which is that's awesome. So looking at the lessons you've learned growing up, I'm going to still stay a little bit in the
yeah,
past a little bit, right?
yeah,
You know, as an athlete, how did that shape your mindset growing up and through to today? And did that help?
yeah, yeah. I think growing up, I was for lack of a better term, kind of like right brain. You know how sometimes artists go into like this right brain mentality, and they're great at painting or drawing or things like that.
Yep.
Um, for me, I was right brain, but right brain sports. So like, I recorded every single NBA on NBC game, like the quadruple header when the playoffs started for basketball, right? Like,
Yep.
and my favorite team was Seattle Supersonics. Like, they don't exist anymore, but I love them. And I would literally like, we didn't have a lot of space in Union City here, but we had like this 15 foot by 15 foot like small yard, and I would play the whole entire NBA finals in that yard. I would take like a trash can, put it up on this table, and like this small basketball, and I would do seed 1 through seed 8, right? Like the
Yeah.
the Suns playing the Portland Trailblazers with Clyde Drexler, right, and the Knicks playing the Bulls on the other side, and like I do the whole bracket. Like I'd do it in chalk on our like in our driveway, and I'd do the whole thing, and it was just like this release, and then that led to, when I got to high school, I grew up homeschooled, so I actually didn't attend middle school, and so we didn't have I didn't have the opportunity to play on an organized team all growing up through middle school. But I finally got a shot, homeschooled, but they started this like homeschooling team, but we were only allowed to play in like a church league over in Crestville, New Jersey. And I wanted to be good. I wanted to get better. And this wasn't make believe anymore, right? This is real life. I'm actually going to play organized basketball for the first time. And so I'm not sure if you remember them, but there's these things called jump soles. You would strap them to your feet, and they
It
promised
could
to
make you
like
jump
increase,
higher.
yeah,
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
to 12 inches, right? And so that's the only thing I asked for my birthday. And well, me and my brother got them. My brother, like, I think he used them twice. But man, I took those and I used those like by the book, through
Yeah.
like plyometrics, like, and obviously we have a small little driveway, and I was self conscious, so I would do the whole workouts at 9 o'clock at night every
Yeah.
Tuesday and Thursday. So I'm doing like box jumps, but there's no boxes, right? So you jump on car bumpers. Some cars
Yeah.
have alarms, some cars don't. So if it has an alarm, you go inside and you wait till the alarm stops, and you go back outside to do like the up and down jumps.
Yep.
Doing the squat with the plyometrics on, doing like the depth jumps. So you got to jump down off of like something, and literally like it just taught me to do stuff and be disciplined when nobody was watching.
Yeah.
Because I was self-conscious, so I didn't want to do it like in the middle of the day, and people be like, oh, what's this stupid thing on these kids' feet, and he's jumping all around the street and the sidewalk. So I do it at night, but it just really started to train me with the discipline of, hey, no, even if no one knows, get better. And I didn't tell anybody about it, right? They didn't have social media, so I wasn't posting my workouts and saying, oh, look at me, I gained 2 inches. And then I just know, I'll never forget, it was January, and we were like, it was like second to last game of this church league. And I remember there's a guy there, and he was kind of like a guy who always makes a bunch of jokes, and he's like, oh, hey, John Paul, you're kind of like big, but you can't really jump. Like, why don't you jump? And I'd never tried. Like, I was those kids who was always trying to dunk a ball. Like, these kids that get a tennis ball, and
Yeah.
they're always trying to dunk and hang
Yeah.
on the rim. I didn't do any of that. I just would do this workout, but I never tested it. And then I remember that was the first time I ever dunked a basketball, was in layup lines before this church league game. And it wasn't even like I was trying, like I just jumped as high as I could and I was up there and I just
Yeah.
turned my hand over. And that like solidified this idea of discipline. That solidified this idea of what you do when nobody's watching will pay off. That
Yeah.
solidified this idea of, even if people think you're crazy, like you stick with something, you do it, even if your brother doesn't join you doing the workouts, even if no one joins you, you got to do it by yourself
Yeah.
in the middle of October, 9 o'clock at night. And I would say that lesson right there, period, um, like is where a lot of this stuff came from. When we eventually talk about all in and that commitment
Yeah.
level, it just started to build those pathways in the brain of like,
Yeah.
hey, this is the path. Like, stick to this. This is what success looks like.
That's awesome. So challenges, what, growing up as a kid, we all face them, right? Athletically, what kind of challenges did you face? Would it be high school, college, or like you said, you had a shot at the next level?
Yeah.
How did that shape you, and how did you push through those challenges?
Uh, I think comparison was such a big challenge. Comparison, you just, even though I didn't have social media at that time, like you just always knew what somebody else was doing. And then once I got on the AAU circuit playing basketball, you know, it's like everybody else is getting a college offer. Someone else on the team is getting acceptance into like this university, or scouts looking at them. And even when you had a good game, it didn't feel like it lasted more than 24 hours. All right. Like the thing you wanted to achieve so badly, you would get. And then it was like, all right, but you got to do it the next one and the
Yeah.
next one. And, comparison, I think that became a huge challenge for me. And in some ways, it's something that I'm still learning to accept and learning to deal with, because that can be such a stealer of joy, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
of course, we know that it's like that old that quote. I'm blanking on it, but it says, if you're not on speaking terms with gratitude, you'll never be. I'm messing it up, but it's basically talking about gratitude being such a key component when it comes to peace and joy in what you do, whether you're playing sport or anything in life. And I know that was a big challenge for me, especially coming from being homeschooled, playing at a smaller Montclair State University Division III
Yeah.
school, and just really coming to grips with, hey, this is my opportunity, even if it doesn't have a scholarship attached, even if it doesn't have ESPN, on the sidelines, and
Yeah.
let me treat it the exact same way. And so I think that's something that I think was a big challenge for me, is just trying to overcome that, because you always second guess yourself, right? When you're not playing at the highest level, sometimes you think, well, this is cool, but I scored 51 points, but it's Division III, right? And you can start to lessen what you're doing and cheapen it. And it was like I was talking to the Montclair State soccer team earlier today. They're getting ready to play in the conference tournament, um, and I just said, I know that feeling, but don't cheapen this. Don't lessen this, right?
Mm.
Don't just be like, yeah, but this is Montclair State. My friend's playing over at St. John's, or this guy's over at Indiana University. They're playing. No, this is what you have, and this is it. All right, like don't cheapen your ability, the time you put in, the effort you put in, just because it doesn't have an NIL deal attached to it.
Yeah.
It takes nothing away from the effort and the time you put in.
Yeah. And you're right. When you were playing, no social media, it was so hard to promote yourself,
Yeah,
right? But now it's almost like backfiring,
yeah,
like too much promotion in the wrong direction, and nobody wants to talk to you,
yeah,
right? But I love what you said is be on speaking terms with gratitude.
yeah,
I don't think, my own personal opinion, I don't think enough people look at what they have
yeah.
versus what they don't have. And it's like I have three kids, right? They're 28, 20, 24. I'm 28, 26, and 24. And I think they have a pretty good life. But it's always like, hey, he's got that, she's got that. I'm like, what's going on? And even with athletes, especially, like you said, it's only Montclair Division III. So
Yeah,
do you know how many
yeah,
kids would love to play Montclair Division III and can't?
yeah, yeah.
And like absorb it, be in the moment, be where your feet are, you know. So let me ask you this, as far as you, right? You know, where was the moment in your world that, your athletic world career develop that all-in philosophy? Was that something that came after college, during college, high school, and when did that come about?
I think it was a thread that was kind of like through everything, going back to doing, plyometric training in my, in my driveway, to, when I got to Montclair State, it was, like I said, it was challenging. And I'll be very honest, I was bitter for a little bit because I wanted to play Division 1, and at Manchester Regional High School, I was 6'4", which means I played center, and we ran a flex offense, and 6'4" at center doesn't cut it at the next level. If you're trying to, there's no
Maybe like
6'4" center.
6'10",
Yeah, you
right?
need 6'10", exactly. And I wasn't a point guard, I wasn't a shooting guard. And I remember my high school coach being honest with me. He's like, you know what, we could try to get you into Division 2, but it's a stretch, and yes, you are player of the year for Passaic County. Yes, you are all state. Yes, you played a North-South game, but he's like, it's just different. All right. Like, you can't stack. Yes, I know this kid from, Patterson Catholic. When they had Patterson Catholic back then, he averaged half of your points. He had 13 points a game. But yeah, he's going someplace else because he's point guard at 6'2", right? And so that was hard for me to come to grips with, or initially. But thank God, I was able to make peace with that and said, if I'm at Montclair State, just because I'm going Division 3 doesn't mean I can't practice like Division 1. And so I started getting up at 5 a.m., and going to campus. I commuted to campus. I didn't have a dorm on campus. We couldn't afford it. And so I would get there at 5 a.m. and I would shoot 500 shots before my classes started every single day.
Wow. How long would that take?
A while. A while. Thankfully, by my sophomore year going to junior year, a teammate joined me. And this is just how remarkable, and that's why I'm a big proponent when I talk to student athletes and just anyone really. His name was James Coger. He's an assistant principal over at Clifton High School now. And James has no problem with me telling you this. He played at Montclair State for 3 years, and he played a total of 4 minutes. And yet he would be at the gym every day, starting in sophomore year at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And so, I happened to make it, right? I happened to be blessed and get to be All-American from that, and, average almost 30 points a game and all this great stuff being Sports Illustrated. But, James didn't. But yet that didn't take away from his commitment. And I say that because, sometimes we can stay committed to something when it looks like, okay, this makes sense. Okay, this is panning out. This is paying off. But to see him show up and the relationship we were able to build after that, it for me showed all in is something. Being committed to something can be almost at a different level, even if you don't.
He was all in.
Yeah, even he didn't see immediate.
And he was probably happy as anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was that dichotomy, right? Yeah, being all in and seeing it pay off on the court and in the papers is great, but this guy was all in.
He was all in for you.
Yeah, the relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so I saw how two things could happen at the same time. Being committed wasn't just about the results; it was about the relationships along the way.
Right.
And so I would say that's where it really got solidified. Of despite where you're put. I remember, like I said, I didn't have a dorm on campus, so I put 2 chairs together in the back of the journals in like the second floor of the library at Montclair State. No one goes there unless you got to write a research paper. At least they did back then. And I would sleep there in between classes, read my Bible, like just passing the time till practice, and then do the same thing over the next day and the next day. And that's where kind of some of this mindset of being all in kind of came about. And in all honesty, it just kind of turned into a lifestyle. It became those those little voices, that internal controls, and it stopped just being about the basketball court. Started happening in the papers I would write and how I would treat my younger brother and younger sister, right? Like I started seeing it invade all areas of my life, and that's why I'm a big proponent that being all in is not just a slogan. It can be a lifestyle. It's not just a great way to make a living; it's a great way to make a life. And it's taking those little opportunities you get. All right, you only get like I said, going back to my dad, like. He got 20 minutes with us a day because we were already asleep when he came home after his night school classes that he would teach. But he took 20 minutes and we were playing like NFL style football in the street for 20 minutes. It wasn't like, all right, well, if I got 3 hours and let me get up for it and change my shoes. And those, all those little experiences along the way of, all right, hey, this is D3. We got orange lights that buzz in the Montclair State gym. The only time you can shoot shots is at 5 a.m. in the morning because they run phys ed classes the rest of the day until practice, and then volleyball practices, and then maybe you get an hour and a half. Then your team practice, you don't have individual time. That's what you do. And so I think little seeds began to get planted all along the way. And so when it came time to talk about it, it was more about just sharing of life experience than
Yeah.
actually giving like a philosophy, if you will.
Yeah, that is so cool. And it's inspiring, and you think about you're out there inspiring. I can't, I don't know how many, it's millions of people. I don't know, right? A lot of people, you know. But who inspired you, to become who you are? I know your dad was a big figure in your life, but who are the people that were in your life that were there for you to help, like your friend at
Yeah.
college and
Yeah.
all along the
Yeah.
way that helped you get into who you are today?
I'd say, just, from the beginning, raised in a household of faith. So it was just, faith in the Bible and like, learning about Jesus Christ. That was huge. I would say when it comes to like individuals that I was blessed with, my dad, um, having coaches along the way that believed in you, like I said, I was homeschooled. And so when we moved out to the Haledon area, it was the high school coach. His name was Jay Cody. He had some success in like Wayne Valley, Wayne Hills, that area in New Jersey. Um, but literally, I move out to there. I show up at a summer basketball camp. There's only two kids there, me and this other kid, and he was a soccer player, so he was actually kicking the basketball. So he only showed up for one day. But I showed up, and like I said, I've been doing plyometrics, and so I think he was probably just going to be like, "Hey, listen, there's only one kid in this camp. Why don't you just go home, call it?" I think he was trying to start something at the high school, but only two, like I said, two people showed up, me and this other kid, and because I've been doing plyometrics, I could dunk pretty easily off a vertical jump. I didn't need a running start, right? And I think he was like, "All right, who are you? Where'd you come from? And who do you play for?" And I was like, "Actually, I just moved into the area. I was homeschooled, so I actually don't go to school," which was like, you don't go to school. Like, is that a violation? Truancy. And so we explained it to him. And this guy brought the guidance counselor over by Friday and found a way to get me into Manchester Regional High School, right? By before the start of the season, by the Thanksgiving of November, right? Back when basketball had to start after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so he would be one of those guys. I remember my first college coach, his name was Dave Manzer. He passed away from cancer, but I remember him coming up to me after we had lost this game against Hamilton College down in Tampa. And, it was like a Christmas tournament, and him saying, "Hey, Jean Paul, you're really good. I think you could play professionally one day." Now, we had just lost to Hamilton College by, I think, 30 points. And I felt bullied. Like I was, once again, undersized, but I was also the guy who was playing against me was like a football player, had 40 pounds of muscle on me. And I was like, "Man, this guy's crazy. Why would he say that to me?" But, a small part of me believed him. And
Yeah.
I would hear his voice. And that's what got me to sometimes get up at 5 a.m. and do things like that. And, crazy, full circle moment. He gets fired from Messiah College. That's the first place I played before I went to Montclair State. And he gets fired from the college my freshman year. I transferred to Montclair State. He's Greg Oden and Mike Connolly's trainer for the draft. And so when I graduate and I'm get the invitation to play professionally, I go out to Indiana and train with him, who's training Greg Oden and Mike Connolly, right, from Ohio State. And Carl Landry, who was at Purdue, and like this whole Midwestern clique of
Big names.
yeah, first day draft picks.
Yeah.
I'm training with them. Obviously, I don't get picked as high as them, but that's what gets my foot in the door to get a free agent and get out to Los Angeles. So I'll take individuals like that. It's that old saying, right? The people who believe in you before you start believing in yourself. And I think I was blessed with a number of them who really, decided to do it. And I think maybe that's why I really love, love coming back, becoming a teacher, and the different roles I have now is because you get opportunities to be that same person who believes in others before they start believing in themselves. And I think it's invaluable.
It is so true that people see stuff in you before you see it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and sometimes we're blind. We're blinded by, I don't know what, maybe comparison, like you said before, and these people, they keep telling you, and you're like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Well, sports, I'm a sports junkie. I'm a college football fanatic. I always say if I had enough TVs in my house, I'd watch every game that's on, you know. But sports has been extremely instrumental in my life. From little kid through high school, and you always you're the average of the people you hang around. And
Yeah.
I could have went down different directions, and the sports world pulled me in the right direction.
Mm.
Coaches were, if it wasn't for certain coaches, I wouldn't be who I am today, all that stuff. But looking at you in your life, like how did sports, right, help you become this a motivational speaker to so many?
You know, I think it's just a connection aspect. There's this great coach. He used to coach over at Hoffman Christian Academy off of Route 208 there, and you know, he always said it's a bridge. You know, sports is a bridge. It's something that connects us, and you know, I saw it to be true. My junior year at Montclair State, I got an opportunity. I'm not sure if you remember. There used to be this like traveling basketball team called And One, like the
Yeah.
mixtape. Yeah, yeah, those guys, right? And I got an opportunity to kind of play with some of them at this, like they call it an open run, where it's like they would come in and they would verse like the best basketball players from the city, and it's like street ball and like not really ref and just
Yeah.
dunks and like fancy dribbling moves. And I just remember going to that and being a part of it, and I saw the pull that sports could have on lives, you know, and I guess I was kind of enamored by that, you know, because I love sports as well. I love what it has the power to do. You know, you watch the World Cup and wars stop, right? For sport, right? It has an amazing ability to build relationship, like we said before, and connect. And so when when I came back from playing basketball in Los Angeles and I wanted to make a difference here in Union City, I needed my teacher's certificate. I didn't know that, so I had to go back to school and get one. But when I went to the only place that would let me work with students on a regular basis, and it was the local juvenile jail in Hudson County here, and in Essex County, the juvenile jail there. And you want to help kids, but you know, you go in a place like that and try to say, "Oh, let me sit down with you and talk about your problems." The kids are like, "Man, f you, like get out of
Yeah.
here." Like, and I get that, right? Like, who's this guy? He's gonna tell me what to do, who to be. Like, get out
Yep.
of here. I don't know him. But it was by us playing basketball with him in the jails that, man, Jeff, it was wild. And we would never play against them. We'd always play with them. So we'd bring these jerseys, these uniforms, get them out of their jumpsuits. So already we're changing the mindset, right? Sport.
Yeah.
And then for 1 hour, one day a week, they get to be kids again. They get to be basketball players. And we'd always play with them. So it'd be like me and the guys who went with me, they they were the local guys I played with in the New
Yeah.
Jersey Athletic Conference in Division III. I remember, you know, some people, some people say social media is bad. I would have no idea how to contact these guys saying, "Hey, I'm going to go to the jail. If you want to go with me, we're going to play basketball with kids." It was Noel Colon from Ramapo, a guard from New Jersey City University, who's the head coach of St. Peter's College now. Carlos Perez, who played for the University of Florida and was with the Eagles for a second, but then was, you know, the pastor over in Newark. But all these guys that I played against or with in college, I said, "Hey, would you want to go to the jails and play basketball and try to help some kids?" They said yes. And the next thing we're doing, we're like, it becomes like the biggest thing happening at the jail through
Yeah.
sport. And it's just
Yeah.
because, you know, you're playing on the same team. I don't know these kids from Adam, but you go down the court, you give him a pass, he makes a shot, you give him like a high five or a fist bump. Next
Yeah.
thing you know, he's telling you his life story during a
Yeah.
timeout because of sport, right? Sport does that. Where I couldn't do that in 50 counseling sessions with the kid. Hopefully he opens up. But because we threw a ball around together and we put it in the hole and we're on the same team, we're wearing the
Yeah.
same colored jersey, it changes everything.
It gives you the opportunity, John Paul, to earn the right to be part of their lives.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you being on the take, like you said, taking the jumpsuit off, let them become kids again. It almost lets them escape from that world, no
Yes.
pun intended, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and to be a regular person and enjoy life for that split second. And you brought that to them. So that creates that bond, that
Yeah.
energy, that electricity
Yeah.
that allows them to open up to you.
Yeah.
And you build that respect,
Yeah.
which is you respect them and they respect you.
Yeah. And sports does that. It's
Yeah.
like how quickly you can, you know, you could walk down the street, you see somebody wearing a Yankees hat today, you can
Feel
empathize with
bad.
them like, oh man, tough one last night, right?
Yeah.
I would have no other way to talk to that person, but he's wearing a Yankees hat, and either is going to be like, oh my God. And we could get in a 10-minute conversation at Starbucks, or you know, or it could go the other way and be like, oh, I just like the colors, right? And then it stops. But for the
Yeah.
most part, we're going to have a 10 or 15-minute conversation. Oh, why
Yeah.
did Boone do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, why did Garrett not run to first base? Like,
Yeah.
but it's because of sport. It
Yeah.
builds relationship, and like you said, that the ability to speak into and talk in someone's life,
Yeah.
like I think it's ultimate. It's more than just a hobby. It's a
Yeah.
lifestyle.
it's a lifestyle, and here's what I say: it's a feeling,
Yeah.
right? And somebody told me a million years ago is chase the feeling you get when you were playing.
Mm,
You know that feeling when you're out there, like you can't explain it to
yeah.
anybody. If you weren't
Yep.
doing it, you can't explain it. Somebody, oh, try and I can't.
Can't.
But when I do these shows, I feel like I'm back out there playing again. I'm getting
Wow.
that
Wow.
feeling.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I tell so many guys, I'm like, whatever career you want to do, I don't care what you're doing.
That's
Chase
good.
that feeling you get from when you're out there playing whatever sport you have, and then you
That's
know
good.
you love what you're doing.
That's good. That's good. I
You
like that.
know, I
So
thought
good.
I was like, holy smokes. So now sports teacher, motivational speaker, traveling the world. What inspired you to say, hey, you know what? Teaching's cool. I love it, but I'm going to take this next step to be a speaker and bring this all in philosophy, mentality, mindset
Mm.
to everybody.
Yeah. And like I said, I didn't expect to plan any of this, Jeff. Just been like the whole entire idea of being a speaker. Like I'm like I said, just rewinding it. I'm in jails. I finally get my teacher's certificate. I'm teaching ninth grade world history over at Union City High School. And then I get a call from the then chaplain of the Giants. It was during seventh period world history. I'll never forget the seventh period. It was like almost the last period of the day. And he's like, "Hey man, would you speak to the team?" And I was like, "Man, I didn't play football. Like, how am I really gonna
You look
like,
like a football player.
yeah. I was like, I can get away with it, but I never got hit like that before, etc." And he's like, "No, I think the message you're talking about and what you're saying." And he's like, "Yeah, I think it'll relate. It'll work." And crazy enough, backstory, one of the reasons he called me up is because of the work I was doing in the jails. And so, like I always like to tell the students I work with, and people ask me, like, if I don't go to jails on Tuesday nights, I never speak to the New York Giants that night. I don't speak to the New York Giants that night. I'm not, as you said, like speaking to a group in Hong Kong or Malaysia, or like, flying out to Denver next week, or traveling with the Giants now as their chaplain on the health and wellness team when we play the Panthers in Munich, Germany, next week. But it was like being faithful, once again, to your point, being committed and faithful in the little things. All right, the only place that'll let me, work with kids is jails until I get my teacher's certificate. Okay, cool. I'm going to jails. All right, the only place I can go and play college basketball, quote unquote, only is Montclair State. All right, great. I'm gonna give my best to Montclair State. I think it's that, it comes from the Bible. It's like if you can be faithful with little, you can be entrusted with much. And so, that's I go and speak to the team. And honestly, it's a tough room to speak to, because you got Eli sitting in the front row and everybody on the team there, and let's just say they're not very responsive, right? It's the night before a game. They're thinking about, game plans and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And it's not, I didn't even speak to them long. Like it was 17 minutes. That's all the time you get to speak at these,
That's a long time.
yeah, it is, and it's not, right?
Yeah.
And so I just tried to share my heart of like, hey, what does it look like to be committed, as a man,
Yeah.
yes, with your profession, but, for your family, for your community. And, that's where I gave him that poker chip. And, I'm being a ninth grade teacher, I'm always realizing analogies and metaphors. You need to kind of like bring it to an understanding and relatability. And so I said, you're playing poker, you put your chips in the middle, you can't pull them back. You can't take them back and say you were just kidding. And if you would never do that in a game of poker, pull them back, why don't we apply the same lesson to our lives, right? And so I gave
Yeah.
him a chip, because I know we hear good things and sometimes we forget them. So just, cheap plastic chips. They were from Walmart. I picked them up at the Walmart in Secaucus before going over there. And I gave him a marker. And I said, if you mean business, you take this chip and you sign it, put it someplace you see it. And, honestly, they took it from there. And it's interesting because I was talking to Justin Tuck on the sidelines a couple of weeks ago before one of the games. And he'll be the first one to say, he's like, John Paul, you didn't tell us anything we didn't know, but you gave us vocabulary for something we should have been doing all along. And he's like, we knew we should have been, there's some things we could have given more effort to. We knew there were areas that we could have been more disciplined in. But he's like, it just gave us quick vocabulary to hold ourselves accountable,
Yeah.
right in the middle of being like, hey, is that all in? Hey, could you watch more film? Hey, is that all like right? And so he said it just became vocabulary to help keep us accountable on the field, off the field, whatever it looked like. And he's like, that's what kind of took place, is it just became something that really helped us continue on that path in a way that was ours. He's like, you didn't give us an idea that wasn't ours already, but it was just the vocabulary that we could put on the idea we knew we should have been doing. Like you said, like, when you look at their faces, you can tell what they're thinking,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it gave like that buzzword to help them
Yeah.
check each other in the moments they needed to.
And what's so cool is all those guys you spoke to that day, they're all gone, right? They've all retired, but the team has kept you delivering that message year after year after year, and I'm going to guarantee that these guys get traded, they go all over the place, and your message just goes from team to team.
Yeah, it was it was kind of funny that you say that. I mean, and this is why I always just give like a little bit of disclaimer, like when I got to speak for your organization, is it's not a magic word either, because I remember when Chuck he went to the Raiders after the Giants, and he actually brought me in to speak to the Raiders when they were playing the Jets. I think it was the first game of the season that year, and did it, got chips, like it was cool, and then the Raiders lost the first 8 games of the season. And unfortunately, they fired the coach. And Justin was like, "What happened?" I was like, "I don't know, man." Like I said, it's not a
Well,
magic
you
word.
can't play the game for them.
No, I can't.
You know?
Same thing. I was like, "Hey, I'm sorry." He's like, "No, no, no, don't worry. I don't blame you." But he's like, "It's just wild." I was like, "Hey, sometimes there's certain words like." But the cool part is like getting to hear from some of those guys. Even after they took the pads and the helmet off, the cool part is, them turning it into a lifestyle, them
Yeah.
applying it to their relationships with their kids.
Yeah.
Right. Like Justin's another great example of, to your point, and I love what you said about finding something that makes you feel like when you play, he didn't want to be the token guy, because he was interested in finance, but like the ex player that comes around to when you sign a deal and like, oh, look who we have on staff. And so this guy goes and gets his MBA from Wharton. And now he's like, now I'm a part of the team at Goldman Sachs, not just the cool guy we bring around like to sign a football from Notre Dame, and Super Bowl champion. Look at my rings. And so I was like, that's cool, man. And he's like, yeah, I found something I love doing. And to your point, it makes me feel like, that competitiveness again. And, he took it to his education. Right. And so I think that's the cool part of seeing people apply it, not just in their professions, on the field, off the field, in the pool, on the mat, wherever it looks like, but also in their everyday life. I think that's really cool to see.
So when did you realize that speech that day, how many years ago was that now? The first one?
2012.
Oh my
2012, yeah.
God.
So like
That long
12
ago.
years.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
So when did it come about? When did you realize that your message, your all-in message, really isn't just about sports? It's about life. And then it just expanded. Like, when did that happen?
You know what? Answering you honestly, Jeff, man, like that's still something I probably haven't totally come to grips with, and I think if I think, on the wrong side of things, I can feel overly insecure and like an imposter, if that makes some sense. Too much the other way can make me feel like oh, wow, like too arrogant, if you will. And so I really am thankful that God gave the opportunity to share and to be an encouragement. But I'd be lying if I say I don't battle with those thoughts, on the plane out to Denver next week, in the different places I'll go to share, because that is the thought. It's like, oh, what if people don't really want this? What if they think, no, this doesn't apply to me, whatever the case may be. And I think that's something I do wrestle with. But I think the cool part is the ability to see, and that's something I always try to say is, like you just said, this is not about football. This is not about just, a sales initiative to increase a profit margin or whatever the case may be. Like, can it do that? Yeah, it can. Don't get me wrong, because I think we all have enough.
It does.
We have another level we can tap into.
Yeah.
But I was like, and I'm big in that. That's what I usually end a lot of my talks with. It's my hope you'll take the chip. Don't just leave it at your desk. Don't just leave it in your bag before you hit the field or in your locker. I'm a big part of, man, take it home with you. To put it in your car. Sometimes, I'm big on this too. In the past couple of years, I learned the hard way is like, you can't be all in for others unless you take time to be all in for yourself. And whatever that looks like. Sometimes it's, it's that vacation you always say you're going to take when when the business dies down, mellows out, or it doesn't. It's been 15 years. It's that coffee date, or sometimes it's taking the clothes off the Peloton, because we always say, all right, I'm going to start next month on the rides, and then we never do. And so I said, I learned the hard way that you can't keep on pouring out of an empty cup, and you got to take time to like let yourself get refilled, and that means being intentional about what fills you up. And so I think seeing individuals walk in that path, especially those like yourself and like so many that are impacting so many other lives. It's like that saying, the race is not given to the swift, but given for those who endure. And the only way we're going to, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the only way we're going to be able to endure is by making sure we take time to, be all in for ourselves, and whatever that looks like. Doesn't mean you have to be so selfish. And no, it just might be 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day. It might be getting to that gym 4 days a week, but there's way too many 2-year wonders, and then you're like, oh man, what happened? Where'd they go? And a lot of that happens because, they weren't, inputting in themselves in the same way.
Yeah. I mean, time flies, right?
Yeah.
Like we just said, how long ago was that first one? You're like, oh my God, 12 years.
Yeah.
But look at how it's evolved and grown in 12 years. Like you would have never thought this 12 years ago, right?
No concept.
So do you take anything from your athletic world, that your personal experience that you build into the all in talk to
Yeah.
share with everybody else?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's like I said, a lot of it is just kind of sharing experiences. I go all the way back to, just the early days of the decisions, about high school, of going, because sometimes you, oh, I'll go all in once I get here. Right. And I'm big on like talking about my time at Division III at Montclair State, of like, all in doesn't start once you get there, because chances are if you haven't been doing it all along the way, you're not going to flip the switch on, right? It's a muscle, right? And when you want to depend on that muscle, you think you're going to turn it on once you get to be, partner, or once you get this, regional manager job. Oh, then I'm going to be really dedicated to the details. You're not going to have the muscle to use, right? The leg's going to give out because you haven't been strengthening it all along, and you can't just turn it on. Then, so I definitely do reference a lot of those experiences. I think something else I've referenced is, funny enough, this Sunday is the New York City Marathon, and I remember getting an opportunity, long story short, from an orphanage in South Africa to run the New York City Marathon while dribbling a basketball. It's crazy. It's crazy. But
you did that?
Yeah. Did the 6 months of training, dribbled the basketball all over like Patterson and Haledon, North Haledon. I was living out there at the time and getting ready. And then, I just never forget that Sunday doing it. And, what was interesting is the very thing I thought would hold me back dribbling a basketball, because that's why the orphanage wanted me to do it, is like, oh, this would be really cool seeing guys dribble a basketball, and you're wearing our t-shirt. It'll be something unique, let people like want to fundraise for it. The thing I thought would hold me back, the dribbling part, the basketball, actually was the main thing that kept me going, because it was just that rhythm, because I wasn't dribbling it like trying to make sure no one would steal it. It was, I could keep it waist level high.
Yeah.
And it was that just focusing on the ball in front of me, that, coming from being a basketball player, you don't run more than 1 mile, really. Like, it's like the test 1 mile at the beginning of the season, preseason, you don't do anything more than that. But 26.2 miles, right? 50,000 runners all over New York. But, I hit the wall at 17 miles like most people do. But it was the basketball. It was just that rhythm of just saying, let me just get one more dribble.
What year did you run it?
I ran it in 2009.
Yeah. I ran it last year.
Oh, wow. Amazing experience, right?
Oh my God. It was crazy. I ran it with my daughter, and I have on my wall, I got the picture over here of us crossing the finish line together.
It's amazing.
It's awesome.
I always tell people, I was like, I know sometimes it's hard to get in. I was like, there's something about running the New York City Marathon. Like, don't get me wrong, Tampa Marathon is fun, but half of that is on some highway in Tampa, and it's like 100 degrees, right? But you go through the boroughs, and people are cheering,
and the
they
crowd
don't even know you. The crowds, and people are like giving out food. Like it was, but it was, for me, it was at basketball. And so I talk about that, of like, sometimes being all in is doing what's right in front of your face, right? Because we can get so psyched out with saying, oh man, how can I keep this up into January or February? I can't do this for 6 months. And sometimes, just like dribbling that basketball in the New York City Marathon that year, the very thing I thought would hold me back was the thing that actually helped me get across the finish line, which was just, hey, let me just dribble one more time. Let me, put it in the right hand, put it in the left hand. And you add up all those dribbles and all those steps, but it helped keep me on pace.
Yeah. I mean, what you just said is be all in with what's in front of you.
Yeah.
For so many people, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things going on, and how do they stay focused on that one thing? And that basketball analogy, that is so, you can't keep going unless you stay focused on that ball.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So your message, all in, how has that evolved over the years? 12 years. How it started out, hey, this is something new in front of the Giants, and now it's involved into this world tour.
Yeah. I think once again, none of this was planned or expected. And of course, if I'm working with a different organization, I try to understand as much as I possibly can about it. Some things I actually spoke for a group, Batesville in Indiana. They're the world's second largest producers of caskets, right? I don't know about how to make caskets, what makes that, industry work.
Right.
So I try to understand as best as possible about industries, but there's some things, I spoke for a power plant out in Yuma, Arizona, right? Like, I don't know the first thing about nuclear fission, right? Like, kind of thing. But I think at the end of the day, one of the things that's evolved, and I mean, we said it earlier, is relationship, is relationship, and really saying, yeah, this is what these individuals may do, but at the end of the day, a lot of these individuals are dads, their moms, their brothers, their sisters, their sons, their daughters, for sometimes elderly parents going through a difficult time right now. Yeah, the people. And so I think it's understanding enough to say, hey, all in might look like that extra email on a Friday to, this client, all in might look like, double checking the lockbox, the lockout box to make sure everything is set for the people who are doing some maintenance and repairs on Silo 5. But at the end of the day, it's also just the relationships we build. It's the commitment to our children, our grandchildren, and us taking pride in that. And, and at the same time, holding ourselves to a standard, not just because somebody's going to check or look, but because, no, this is what we do, because, it's something we hear for ourselves, and so I think it has evolved based, to some degree on who I'm speaking to that night, speaking to that, that evening. Some of it is more relatable, right? Like speaking to the soccer team today, I knew what it was to play Division III and be at Montclair State. And, sometimes you have more parents in the crowd than fans, and ESPN2 is not streaming it, but sometimes it is a little bit of a different subject material. But like you said, at the end of the day, we're people, and we want to be. There's this great story by Bruce Springsteen in his book, and I read it in this book called The Intentional Father by John Tyson, which is a great book. And he basically talks about how when Springsteen had his first kid out in California, his dad went and visited him, and he said that him and his dad did not have the best relationship. And he said, drinking beer over breakfast with his dad kind of apologized to him. And there's this great quote in there where Springsteen says, he's like, in that moment, I realized that, our parents can become two things, and we can become two things. We become ancestors, or we can become ghosts. He's like, ancestors give you a sense of purpose. They show you, where your place is, how things are bigger than yourself. And he's like, ghosts, they haunt you. They're always there on your shoulder when things go wrong, and sometimes you even hear them when things go right, that it's not enough. And I just love that quote, because I think that's what all in, I think, looks like, is when we live lives that are committed to what's right in front of us and give the best we can, not more than we can, not inflated, but the best we can, with the talents and abilities that we've been blessed with. I think we begin to help other people learn their place in life too. And we're not ghosts anymore. We're not going to be that voice that haunts them and says, oh, I wasn't good enough, or, oh, I screwed up again. But hey, no, this is how we do things. And we could have done better. We'll get it next time. Or we could, great job. You did it awesome. Be proud of yourself. Right. And I just love that idea, because I think working with youth nowadays, they need that. Too many youth are self-initializing, right? Because we took away the initiation ceremonies, right? Back in the day in history, it was, you go out with this group, you go hunting, believe at 13, you come back, you're a man, right? You're a woman. Yeah. And I think the more we can go back to, not ancient ideas, but showing people what it looks like, standards, right? Procedures of, hey, this is how we do things here. Whether it's on a team, whether it's in a school, whether it's in a corporation, and we're proud of it. We're not number one yet, but we're proud of what we do, even if it's just a small team of 10 people. We go all in, if you will. And it's not just about the profit margin, it's about the people we get to impact. I think that's, that is a powerful thing for someone to be able to go home to at night and realize, oh my God, I gave my best.
But, what you just said, ancestors are ghosts, what you'll find in most cultures, right? I say most, all, everyone's proud of their ancestors. Mm-hmm. They're afraid of ghosts. They don't want to talk about their ghosts. Yeah. You know what I mean? But you talk about ancestry, all these things. Oh, look at your history. Go track your history. All this stuff.
Billion dollar organization, right?
Yeah.
Trace it all the way back. Yes.
Right. And when they find that one link to that ancestor, like, woohoo, I'm proud of that guy.
Yes.
Right? They might not know him, but they're proud of him. but what you said about parents,
Mm.
you can be your kid's ancestor, where they're proud of you, they think about you, they're happy that you helped them, or you
Yeah,
can be the ghost.
yeah,
You can be the pain in the neck. You can be the non-involved,
mm,
that nobody
yeah,
wants to talk about.
yeah.
That is so true. So there's people out there right now, John Paul, that want to do what you do. What kind of advice can you give to the young guy or girl out there who has inspirations of impacting people like you do? They don't know
Mm,
what to do, how to do it, and like you evolved over all these years. What advice can you give them about pursuing a career path of speaking?
mm. I would say, do it where you have the open door to do it. Like going back to what we said, like I originally came back from Los Angeles, and yeah, hey, wow, I got a shot playing in like the NBA summer league. I want to work with the best students, the best athletes. That was in my mind what I was going to do, but the only door open was juvenile jails. So to juvenile jails it was on Tuesday nights. All right, kind of thing. Like I think sometimes we wait for this opportunity, and sometimes once again the opportunities are right in front of us. Erwin McManus has this great quote. He says, "When we abdicate our responsibilities, we'll eliminate our opportunities." And I think he's right. Like sometimes the greatest opportunities are the responsibilities we already have, but we think we're waiting for something else. It's like, some of my students, I remember I told them, I was like, they're like, oh man, I got to do this, Miss Kopicki's homework. Oh my goodness, blah, blah, blah. And it was funny because then they wanted internships as a senior, right? To get ready. Oh, I want to, work in Google. I want to do all this stuff. I was like, guys, you have no idea that Miss Kopicki's husband actually works as a senior associate at this really big firm. But you have no idea about that. But you'll never smell that, for lack of a better term, because you won't do her homework. I'm pretty sure he hires 20 interns a summer, and they actually get paid for their internship. Like I remember one kid, like I heard about it, like he got like $10,000 for the summer working at this firm,
Wow.
right? Like UBS and stuff like that. But I was like, because you won't do the homework that's right in front of you. Do you think she's actually going to call you up when you're like, oh, hey, Ms. Kopicki, write this letter of recommendation. I'm looking for internships. Probably not. But you
Yeah.
had no idea because you're only seeing this and you don't realize, as you know as well, like we could trace our career paths and there's so many things we had no idea somebody was watching. We had no
Right.
idea someone was paying. And it's that email on a Tuesday that says, hey, I have this position. I know we haven't spoken in a while. Would you be interested? Let's go get coffee. And it's like, wow. And it's like, yeah, remember you were working that job and I saw how well you did on that project. And you actually,
Yep.
took the the whole entire blame, and, you led really well. That always stuck with it.
Yeah.
But, those are the opportunities, the ones
Yeah.
that come and we least expect it, but it's usually right in the middle of our responsibility. So to answer your question, I think there's so many mediums you can use, social media, using Instagram, Reels, like this also when you're using podcasting. And I think all of those are great ways to get into it. But don't wait, don't leave it for this opportunity of, oh, okay, well, once I get the big contract to do a podcast, then I'm gonna start my podcast. Like, no, the contract's never gonna come unless you start with what you have.
You guys do
Right.
something.
Yeah, you're never going to get the invitation to speak, on the stage over at Walmart for their shareholders meeting if you're not willing to sometimes go to the Boys and Girls Club and just give those 5-minute talks
Yeah.
after basketball practice to the 10 kids who are there, and it feels more like babysitting, right? Like I think there's so many little opportunities we have to impact others, and that's where you also try out new material, right? Like you find
Yeah.
out what works, does, and some people say, oh, well, how do you adapt your material every week working with the Giants? Being a ninth grade teacher, like kids will let you know what works and what doesn't work very quickly.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right,
I try to say is don't be above the work.
yes, yeah, that's good.
Don't be above it.
So good.
It doesn't mean you're going to enjoy it, but don't be above it.
So good. Yeah.
Go get it done.
Yeah.
So what's your trajectory look like? I mean, you've come so far in 12 years. What does the path look like? What are you hoping to accomplish? Like, what's next for you?
Oh man, I don't know, man. Like I said, all this is something I'm grateful to God for. I did not plan any of this. And so I kind of take it, not to quote Fast and the Furious all the time, but, sometimes you take your life a quarter mile at a time, kind of thing. So none of this was planned up till now. But at the same time, I do know there are some themes, like you said, you find something you love that makes you feel like you're playing again. And I think part of that is, getting to impact, the next generation, getting to, really pour into them and encourage those. Sometimes, something I've realized this the past couple of years is, you don't always have to be the the executive director, the one leading it. Sometimes you can just be a really good supporter,
Yeah.
really good supporter, and just be like, hey, I can't lead this small group, but I'm going to show up when I can, and every time I come, I want to be able to support and encourage. Right. And so sometimes it's just learning, I'm learning those roles about what that looks like. And so I don't know, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's in a school system, maybe it's, finally making use of my, my master's degree in administration and becoming a principal, but maybe it's just continuing on this path and helping others who are already in leadership positions, supporting them, helping them along the way. I don't totally know what it looks like. I would like to, being with the Giants is my 9th season, so I would be awesome if we win a Super Bowl soon. That would be great. I wouldn't complain about that. I think the guys deserve it. They're working so hard. But I think for me personally and my family, just finding ways that we could be a blessing and encouragement to others, with the talent and ability that God has given us and resources.
Now, did you grow up being a Giants fan?
So I was a really big Dan Marino
I don't want to put you on the spot.
So no, they know it because I do wear my aqua and an orange tie every now and then on a road trips. But I'm a Dolphins fan. Growing up, Dan Marino, that was my guy, and so I really enjoyed them.
All right, I'm a Cowboys fan, so
okay.
So that hurts even more.
Doing this podcast right now.
Oh, God, but this has been great. I really appreciate you being on here. But is there anything else I haven't asked you? Anything we haven't talked about that you think we should touch on before we wrap it up?
No, I think, man, this has just been such a privilege and just an awesome opportunity. And I guess the one quote that comes to mind, and I share this when I speak, is, sometimes we can get like so caught up with, when we're trying to be all in, the one thing I'll say is sometimes working with groups and, encourage them to talk about what it means to be committed and be all in, you can start to get siloed even in being all in and point the finger and be like, well, I'm giving my best, but he's not, or she's not, or, the government's not, or, why should I, how can I, why should I care when everyone else around me, and I get it, society, sometimes it feels like everyone's just going halfway, doing just enough to get by, but I know the thing that was very influential and helpful for me was, once again, another quote by Erwin McManus. And it said, arrogance looks for someone to blame, but humility looks for something to solve. And I think it's so true and needed now more than ever. We don't need more individuals who think more of themselves than they ought to. It's having the humility to say, you know what, maybe I haven't been looking at this. Let me take a step back. That coming here to Union City, I love my city, but at first I had these delusions of grandeur. All right, well, I played in professional basketball. I'm gonna come here and be like, save all the kids. And probably the greatest thing in the world was just to start teaching, being a 9th grade world history teacher and being at the ground level and humble enough to see and ask kids during lunch period, hey, like what would help? Like, why do you get involved in fights after school? Like, what are you looking for? And those honest, humble conversations, that we were able to have helped develop philosophies and initiatives that really made an impact. But it took having to be humbled. And sometimes being humbled is not fun, but it's amazing how much can get done by people who are willing to be humble and don't care who gets the credit, right?
That's awesome. How can everybody get a hold of you? They want to bring you in. They want you to speak at their organization, their function. How can they get a hold of you?
I got a website, JeanPaulGonzalez.com. You can jump on that. Social media, on Instagram, Twitter. During the football season, it's a little bit tougher traveling with the team on the weekends. But honestly, I always love to help, whether it's a school or an organization, or sometimes just jumping on a Zoom with a bunch of groups. And any way I can help encourage or spread a message that applies not just to the professional but the personal, I'm always down for it.
Right, and I can personally endorse it. I was fortunate to be in the audience, when you spoke for our organization, and man, it's impactful. We had so many guys going around with the chips in their hand, and the guys still have them in their pockets. They're in their office. It's everywhere. I got 2 at home. I got a couple here. Everybody's using it. It was a phenomenal, message, and it's all about being all in. So I appreciate you being all in for me today. This was phenomenal, and I wish you nothing but the best. If there's anything I can do for you and your organization to help you anyway, feel free to reach out, and I'm all in for you.
Jeff, thanks so much, man. It's a pleasure.